Hey everybody, Tom here with Hidden Beats, and today we're talking with Hill Kourkoutis. I think I said that right this time.
Almost.
Almost.
Kourkoutis.
Kourkoutis? Yeah, okay. See, I told you I'd probably butcher it.
It's okay. It wasn't that bad.
We're here today to talk about you, about your music, and about what you do in the world. But for those who are new, can you give a little introduction about yourself?
Sure, yeah. I am primarily a producer, recording engineer, mixer, and songwriter based out of Toronto.
Nice. What got you into music?
You know what? It was one of those things that I just knew I wanted to do from the minute I could think.
Mhm.
Or from the moment I could have a conscious thought, rather. Yeah, I remember being like 3 years old at a Greek cultural event in Toronto with my family, and there was a band playing, and I snuck up on stage and grabbed a tambourine, and I remember feeling like I needed to be there. And ever since that moment, I think every single conscious thought I had was, I want to play guitar, I want to make music. So.
I mean, yeah, sneaking up on stage, you're already a star at that point. So, what were some of your early inspirations for music in general, for stuff that you were kind of looking towards?
Well, initially, I thought the only way to make music was to perform. So, I would see examples like, the Go-Go's or Sheryl Crow or any artist really, Prince, Bowie, and they inspired me. And so my focus was initially in starting bands and performing. And then when I had my first recording experience, I had a producer come to my house. He was an artist named Andrew Franey from a band called Smoother, and he had come to my parents' basement where we had our rehearsal spot in my first band, and brought his computer down and a bunch of mics and recorded a demo for us. And I was just like completely flabbergasted by the recording process. It was so inspiring to me. So from that point forward, I knew I wanted to be a producer as well. And all of these things in music, I think, work symbiotically together, whether you're songwriting or whether you're performing, or whether you're instruments or whether you're in the studio. So I kind of started dabbling in all those things very early, and it's kind of led me to this place right now where I focus primarily on the production writing side of things. But yeah, I mean, I still play a billion instruments, and I still write songs, and sometimes I perform. It's just not as often anymore because I've kind of taken a hiatus from that.
And I mean, if your goal is, production and trying to make that masterpiece, it's, focus there and have fun with the rest, I'd say.
Exactly. Yeah.
hmm So as a producer, what is, I mean, I guess for those who don't know, what does a producer actually do for music?
I think the closest thing that would exist as another example is like the director of a film. So a producer is responsible for kind of overseeing the recording process. And it's both a creative and a technical vocation. So, in terms of making creative choices, I'm usually driving those things, obviously in tandem with the artist, because with the artist I work with, our relationship is very close and symbiotic. And I definitely believe the artist's voice is the most important aspect of that. So the artist has a lot of input in what that creative direction is as well. But I'm a facilitator essentially. So I'm able to kind of take all of these ideas. We consider the song, we consider the sonic palette, the technical, implications that we're working with. And then we kind of marry all those things together to end up with a recording at the end of the day.
Now, what do you think separates a good producer from a great producer?
I definitely think, I mean, that my favorite producers that I've worked with as an artist were the ones that listened, that could kind of pick out all the things that I was saying, but also see the potential of what could be. And they were able to amalgamate those things together. And at the end of the day, the producer's job is to make something that is true to the artist and the artist's voice. And so if you're able to, tell the story truthfully of what the song is saying and ensure that the voice, which is essentially narrating that story, um, you know, is attached to that story authentically, then that's when a producer has done their job. When you believe it, when you feel it.
Yeah. Is there something in your process that you think kind of makes you more unique than someone else, for instance?
I don't know if it's a uniqueness thing, because there's, I think, just like anything, even when you're looking at different types of artists, there's just different types of producers, and I think that the magic combo is when the right artist is paired up with the right producer.
hmm
Because I've seen that go awry too, is when the personalities or the chemistry doesn't match. in the room, between an artist and a producer. So a big part of my approach, and I don't necessarily think it's unique to me. I think a lot of producers might feel this way, but really taking the time to get to know the artist that you're working with before you even start recording. I like to take a lot of time building that relationship, because then once when we're in the studio, because what we do is such a vulnerable process a lot of the time, you're spilling your guts and
Hmm.
it's hard to spill your guts before a stranger, so I really like to take that time to build that relationship, so that once we're in the studio, it's a safe space, people feel like they can trust the space, and then they can open up, and then you're more willing to take creative risks, I think, when you're in that headspace of comfort.
Yeah, and it definitely seems like your process is working well for you. I mean, you have some Juno nominations, and that's one of the big reasons we're here today is to talk about your Juno nomination for Ego Death with Asanabe.
Hmm.
How exciting was that to hear about that nomination?
I mean, it is always a shock, because we're not in this for the accolades,
Hmm.
we're in this to create. But the when something like this comes along, it means people are listening and they're resonating to it a lot of the time, so that definitely felt nice. I'm also nominated for a song called Whiskey Bar by an artist named Tafari Anthony. So, and those two projects were really different from each other, but they're just two artists with really strong voices, really strong storytelling. Like Ace Abbey's record that I produced is about his grandfather Watton, who's a residential school survivor, and so that was a very important story to tell, and we really took a lot of time to ensure that his story was being told respectfully and truthfully. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad he's gotten a bunch of acknowledgement for that record as well, and one story is being told. So it always feels good to also be a part of a project where you're telling an honest story.
Hmm.
And it's same with Tafari's record. He's his story was very different in tone, but it's always amazing to just work with incredible artists. That's what drives me at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I've had a chance to hang out with Asanabe and some of the stuff that he's been doing and chatting with him too. And he's just so, I don't know, he's just doing so much with his music and there's so much there. And it's nice to see that everything's kind of going in an upwards momentum for him for sure.
Yeah, he's an incredible talent, a rare gem, and he's also just such an incredible human being. Like, he's one of
Hmm.
the nicest, most authentic people I've ever met. So
The
I'm
first time I
very
heard
happy
his
for him.
voice, yeah, the first time I heard his voice, I was like, holy wow, okay.
Chills, right? Like, that's
Yeah.
what happened to me. I remember hearing him for the first time and just being like, it stopped me in my tracks. I was like, who the hell is this guy? Like, it was
Hmm.
it was mind blowing. Yeah.
Yeah, he was at City Folk Fest, I think, in Ottawa. Like I'm based in Ottawa here, so he was playing, and I'm one of the photographers that's sitting up front. And as soon as he started, we all kind of went, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. Yeah. You stop in your tracks, right? Like, he
Yeah.
just stops you.
Hmm.
There was something I heard a story from a festival, I think last summer, where those festivals with the two stages where people just start walking away after the
Yeah,
set's done. And so he gets on stage as like people are walking away, and then all of a sudden he just sings, and everybody stopped and turned around and came back to him. So
that's
he's
pretty much
definitely
what it
got one
was
of
like.
those voices.
Yeah. So when you're working, so you just mentioned two great artists. When you're working, I know you talked about trying to build a relationship with them, but because they're different pieces, what do you do differently when you're trying to work with the sounds that they're coming up with? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of technical things that I have no idea when it comes to the work of production. Is there something interesting that you try to work yourself into?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I can't really pigeonhole what I do in a box in terms of genre, because it's so artist dependent. Like, I'm not interested in making something that's already been made before. I'm always looking for, um, the best soundscape that we could create that supports the voice and the story. And that even changes from artist to artist. Like, I've worked with artists over a body of work, and that'll also evolve, I think, as depending on what era they're in,
Hmm.
and what's inspiring them. But I like to have a lot of creative discussions off the get go. That's part of the pre production process for me, and it's really integral just to kind of get an idea of what the current aesthetics that the artist is leaning towards are. Um, and I like to do sometimes a playlisting exercise if I'm working with a new artist, where I'll get them to just give me some examples of songs that they like, or and kind of accompany that with some notes of why you like certain sounds, like, or not even necessarily knowing why, because a lot of artists don't necessarily have the technical knowledge to be able to pick apart a sound and say what they
Hmm.
like about it, but it might just be a feeling. But I'm able to kind of, through that process, form a common thread between the aesthetics that they lean towards, and that helps me in the production process because there's an infinite amount of sounds that we can draw from, but then that helps us kind of narrow things down to what the artist is resonating with. And then a lot of it is just exploring and really listening to the story and listening to the voice. And I like to establish somewhat of a palette going in, a sonic palette going into the recording process. Whether that's, this is kind of where the drums are going to live, this is where
Hmm.
the bass tones are going to live, the guitar, whatever. Are we going to have, strings? Are we going to have horns? Are we going to have those kinds of things? We start to dream those things up as we go. And then, I mean, in kind of an unconscious way now, because I have this like palette of tools technically that I draw from now. I know I like tube gear, and I know I love certain types of mics, or I know that certain types of mics will bring out certain characteristics in certain instruments or voices. So that's when, while we're going through this process, I'll start to think about those types of things. And that's usually what creates the tone of what, with all those things coming together, that's what will create the tone or the spirit of a song or an
Hmm.
album in a lot of cases.
And it's very interesting. So like I know a bit about all different sides of music and stuff. I used to play drums once upon a time, so I understand some of that.
Yes.
But coming into trying to understand some of the stuff that you do, I wouldn't know what I'm doing. So listening to you talk about, and you can see kind of, it just makes you happy thinking about all this,
Yeah.
this might do this and this. It's interesting to see that juxtaposition of kind of how each side of a song works really.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it a lot like painting, right? Like, because I'm a very visual person, and I try to like explain these things through a visual medium. But when I look at like a Van Gogh or a Picasso, right? You're just seeing that there's these different tools that they're integrating, different types of brushes, different paints, different textures, and that's kind of how a song comes together for me, right? It's not necessarily defined. You don't have the finished painting there in front of you. It's a process where you go in with a sketch with an idea, and then you slowly start to layer all these things. And I mean, unlike a painting, unless you're in some collaborative project, but with a painting, it's kind of a singular experience. But the thing that I think makes something like music or film very unique is that we're collaborating with others. And what I think really gets the process going and snowballing is when we're able to find a common language to describe all of these esoteric things. Because even when I was describing the process of making a record, it seems very kind of esoteric and theoretical.
Hmm.
But when we're able to kind of sit there and understand each other's language, because we're trying to describe something that we're perceiving through our ears, it's not something that you can necessarily describe in words a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Or you throw out certain words, like people throw out words like edgy or like
And yeah,
smooth or
what
soft, and it's like, what does that mean? It's relative, right?
mhm.
So that's why I do things like the playlisting exercises and stuff, because I get to kind of get a vocabulary reference for what people perceive. And then I find that the process becomes more grounded because we're able to understand each other. I'm not kind of throwing paint at the wall, seeing if it'll stick
Yeah.
or how it'll settle. Um, and that's, I guess, like a part of why people would work with a producer rather than just like pressing record on something and capturing something live. It's being able to kind of take all those things and find a name and a place for them.
Yeah, because you guys have a different language when you're looking at things too. So if I'm gonna say, hey, I want this to sound dreamy,
Yeah.
what do I know what dreamy sounds like? To me, it's whatever, but you're gonna be like, okay, maybe it has to be this, and have different ways of thinking about it for sure.
Right, and there are certain, like, it's really interesting because when you start to get into the kind of basics of effects, right? Things like reverb or delay or chorus or flangers or phasers or all those things,
Hmm.
they all kind of have qualities to them, just like colors have qualities to them, right? So when I'm hearing those things, like dreamy to me, when someone says something dreamy, I'm automatically thinking of something that's airy. So I'm gonna probably go towards like, a ton of space echoes or reverbs or something like that to create those textures and those feelings. So, because all of these things that we hear incite emotions, they vibrate in certain ways that kind of make us feel certain ways, and there is a bit of a psychology to this as well. Um, but again, that's a relative thing because there are all these things that I think we as a humanity collectively experience and perceive. But then there's the very individual thing that an artist feels, right? And so trying to reconcile those things of what the artist feels and what they're kind of drawn to versus how that'll translate to people on a subconscious level when they're listening to it. And I don't always think about this shit stuff. Can I say shit?
Yeah, yeah, you're
Right.
good.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't always think about this stuff consciously. Like it's because a lot of it now is just because we're talking about it and I'm able to kind of break it down if I'm thinking about it. But a lot of this process for me is intuitive, like you can
Hmm.
tell whether something feels right or not. Or if something feels right or not to an artist, even if I'm not feeling that way, like I'm very conscious of how the artist is feeling because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to have to go out there and perform it.
Yeah.
And it's their voice. So it has to be authentic to them ultimately.
Yeah, I guess that's similar because so I used to be a tattoo designer once upon a time and trying to put a
So
piece
cool.
together for someone who's buying this design from me. I have to make sure that it's something that they're gonna wear. Like that's that's what they want. So yeah, I
Yeah,
can.
you want them to be proud of it, right? And
Mhm.
that's the goal at the end of the day. And I want to be proud of it too, but the ultimate, decider in that is the artist.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm curious. I usually ask when I'm talking to musicians how they've evolved over time with their music with different releases. But from a producer side of thing, how have you grown with music? Like how has music helped you grow up more really?
Well, music is my job, but it's also my life. I think it's one of those rare things in life where your job and your life kind of converge, and it's a lifestyle for me.
Hmm.
And in anything that I do, any project that I choose to do, I really choose it also for the human experience of it. What am I going to learn? How am I going to be challenged? How am I going to be, you know, uh, faced with an experience that will help me grow and understand the world and the people around me a little more? Um, so yeah, there's definitely that's a big part of it. And I'm growing all the time. I mean, I'm learning all the time when we talk about being in an industry where it's so technically based,
Mhm.
and how quickly technology is evolving. I'm constantly learning on that level, on an educational level. But I learn from every artist I work with. When I write songs with an artist, I'm learning about their life and their experience. That's challenging me emotionally. Hearing about experiences and circumstances that are not part of your own experience, I think are so important for growth too. And it just opens your eyes. It helps you understand people better, or it helps you understand how we all need to do better. And that's the beautiful thing about you know being involved with art is it allows you to see the world through so many different lenses.
Mhm.
And I never take it like I never take that for granted. I'm always really conscious of that, the fact that we're at the end of the day we're all just people trying to connect with each other and find common ground, but also celebrate our differences.
Yeah, it's like an individual ground, but in a group setting and like trying to everyone feeling something, but all together.
Yeah, yeah, and it can incite or trigger different things on an individual basis too. But just being very hypersensitive and aware of how things are making other people feel. I guess that's empathy
Yeah,
at the end of the day.
and music itself, like so I found that a song can hit you differently at any moment in your life, really, because like I have a 1.5 year old now, and when I was listening to a song before she was born, it meant one thing, but now listening to it and like having her in my life and influencing me, it means something totally different. So trying to have any sort of emotion in music, I think is a huge point, and especially because it can change at any moment.
It really can. And I think that's what life's about in a way. It's about almost like breaking your heart and cracking it open and just
Mhm.
becoming, more sensitive to everything around you and you love so much more deeply, I think. Like what's it's almost funny, like you have these perceptions growing up of what life is going to be, and then all that starts to get like
100%.
unwind and break down. And I think all of those experiences, even heartbreaks, even the worst things that happen can crack you open in the most beautiful ways so that you're just living more wholly and you're living more in alignment with your truth. And I think that by honoring our own truth, we're able to also honor the truths of others as well. So, and
I used to,
and children change that and change everything drastically. It's
oh God,
they
yeah.
put life into perspective. I mean, I don't have kids of my own. I'm a dog mom. She's close to human, but not quite human.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I've been very close to my nieces and nephews as they're growing up, and it's really been one of the greatest gifts to be an aunt, you know, and
Hmm.
see and be and just witness how a little being this that are quite large, like there's so much in there.
Oh yeah,
There's so
very
much
much so.
wisdom, and they're the greatest teachers in my opinion, you know. They
Yeah,
really bring you into a moment.
I used to always say that I was the guy, you know, emotionless. You didn't care about things, and you know that stalwart person. But then having my daughter, it was like, okay, I kind of have to feel emotions now, and there's so many of them.
And the thing is we all have them, and I think society tells us we need to bury this shit, right? But
Hmm.
we're all feeling so many things all the time, and I think it's so beautiful when you can step into that vulnerability. I mean, that's, I guess, I'm in the business of stepping into your vulnerability, but
Hmm.
I just think it makes our once we start taking off those layers or like those, you know, those strings that are attaching us to things, and I just feel like the more that we allow ourselves to be that way, the more free we become.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. So I have a couple fun questions I always ask when I'm doing interviews to you know those little quick questions that make you think a little bit more.
For
First
sure.
one I think be interesting is what's something on your go-to playlist people wouldn't expect you listen to?
That's hard because I listen to everything.
Yeah, that's why I thought
Um,
it'd be interesting because you probably have quite a large list of things.
I literally listen to everything. I mean, I love listening to Greek music because that's my culture. You know, my family's from Greece, so I love listening to Greek music. I'm really into jazz. I'm really
Okay.
into psychedelic jazz from the '60s, and I don't know. I feel like everybody loves jazz. Jazz is like the part of the roots of pop
Hmm.
music, you know. But yeah, I don't work in jazz. I don't record jazz music, so I don't know. Maybe that's something that's unexpected.
Yeah, and you know, it's something that when you're sitting down and just having a relaxing moment, you can turn something on and someone goes, "Oh, you listen to that?" Like I
I
for
also love the Great American Songbook stuff, like old Cole Porter and Gershwin stuff.
Mhm.
That's especially when I'm working on contemporary music because it's like I'm working with such low frequency stuff. Sometimes when I go back into upstairs and I'm trying to cook dinner or whatever, I'm feeling very like kind of woozy. And
Mm.
I find that when I listen to those really old recordings, like they just bring me into a lighter vibration. So yeah, I love listening to that stuff while I cook and I'm just like puttering around the house.
Yeah, my go-to is like I have a cello playlist that's just a nice, you know, pair of cellos or something like that, just playing the classical stuff, and it's that soothing that brings me kind of, you know, sits me back down and goes, okay, I can just vibe with this and do what I'm doing.
I love that. Well, you'll have to share some of those with me because I definitely need music that calms me down.
Well, so one of my favorites is the two cellos. It's a group of guys, like two of them that do covers of songs, but all with a
Oh,
cello.
that's cool.
They do like AC/DC, everything, and they do some amazing stuff. I got to see them live, and what an experience those guys have because they're so good with what they're doing. They're European, and they just do some amazing stuff with their cellos. So like two cellos is by far
Oh,
the
I love that. I'll
yeah.
check that out. You should also, because you have a young daughter, Rockabye Baby. I don't know if you've come across those on iTunes, but they make actual albums that are like band albums, but it's
Okay.
all lullaby music. So you can get like, there's a Wu-Tang lullaby
Oh,
music. There's
nice.
like, it's incredible. I used to play it for my nephew all the time, and I have a new baby nephew, and he's like obsessed with it. There's a Coldplay one. There's like every artist you could imagine they've like created. There's a Drake one.
Oh wow. Okay. I'm writing that
Yeah.
down right now in my notes here.
Yeah, I can send you a link of it, but I've like it's so fun to listen to even for the grown-ups because they're like, oh, that's they
Hmm.
have a Radiohead one. I like the Radiohead one a lot. It's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. That'll be something because my daughter loves music. I don't really tell this story too often, but she was playing with my phone one day when she was, let's say, 6 months, just kind of smacking at it. She added
Yeah.
a song to my playlist I've never heard before, and it turns out to be probably her single favorite song she's ever listened to the point where like that's gonna be a father-daughter dance song. Eh,
Wow.
yeah, and whenever I turn that on, she stops what she's doing. She comes running over to me and she wants to, you know, get up, and it's called Cinderella by Stephen Curtis Chapman, I think. and he talks about dancing with his daughter in it. So she's like wants up to dance, and I'm like, okay,
Oh,
well.
it's giving me chills.
And when I first listened to it, when she did that, it brought tears to my eyes. I'm like, oh, how did you just pick this out, you little monster? Like,
That's
but
I
they're,
mean that's the type of shit that makes me believe in, like, divine synchronicity, where it was like
mhm.
meant to happen in that moment. The universe is like conspiring to bring that to you.
So she can be having the worst day in the world, and I look at her like, "Do you want your Cinderella song?" Yeah, and then runs and sits down.
Oh,
That's her thing, and it's just picking those random things out of the ether that who would have known that would have been. I've never heard it before. Didn't know who this guy was. None of that.
it's meant to be, right?
Yeah, and now he's getting a whole bunch of plays on Spotify now.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll have to check them out.
Yeah, it was an interesting one for sure, and that's one of those fun ones in my playlist that not a lot of people know about because who would have known that would have happened?
Yeah, it was like a random swipe.
Mhm. Now this one's going to make you think a little bit more. What's
Okay.
one thing you think should be asked more in an interview that's not asked enough?
You know what? I like your life questions that you're asking. I think that getting into the bones of existence is always of interest to me. And when I'm
Mhm.
listening to interviews, I really love to know what other people's perspectives are about just everyday mundane things, not
Yeah,
necessarily. And you get to know the people behind, the persona behind what they do behind a craft. So yeah, I'd say that, which I
that's
think
quite
you're
literally
doing today. It's really cool.
that's literally what I try to gear interviews around. So I only started doing these during COVID because
Mhm.
like what else was there to do? Like I'm actually like my main thing is a photographer. So I would have never thought I would have been in front of a camera and had this set up or anything. And trying to find something that I would think would be interesting. Like you have to ask those cookie cutter questions. That's in
Of
everything. But
course, context. Yeah.
yeah, trying to make something like someone's gonna watch this later and just watch how how much fun we're having just talking about like a song that comes out of nowhere and actually enjoy that. And that's what I would enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I love that.
Hmm. Now this is a fun one. Who plays you in the movie of your life?
God, I've never thought of that.
A lot of
Um,
people don't think about it.
yeah. Well, because I don't ever think anyone would make a movie about my life. But I don't know. I think Aubrey Plaza is hilarious. I think that would be
Yes,
hilarious.
that
Yeah.
would be fun.
But just the deadpan version of me.
She is I don't know, just a great person with what she does. Like she's just perfect how she does her thing.
Yeah, it was funny. I was watching, I've become obsessed with Hot Ones. I don't know
Yep.
if you're like into, okay, like so obsessed with Hot Ones. And I just love that it's such an interesting idea because like the more vulnerable that people get because they just can't stand the fact that their faces are on fire, like
Mhm.
they just get really into the bones of who they are. And but hers, like her episode killed me. Her and
Yeah.
Kate Blanchett. You realize how brilliant Kate Blanchett is when she's getting through her Hot Ones episode. You could barely tell that
Yeah,
it's
some
like
of them are
burning her face
really
off.
I actually bought like the whole Hot Ones like I think it was like the season 5 hot sauce box so I could try all of them. And
Yeah,
going through some of them it was like holy crap, like this is intense. And I love hot food, but like
yeah.
the last dab is insane. Like so people trying to do that and then answer questions, I don't get how they can do it.
Well, it's you just it's a whole level of brilliance. Like I'm blown away by it. Yeah, I actually that's a good idea. I should order. I ordered I can't remember the name of the company right now. There's a company in Thunder Bay. They've been on a bunch of seasons of Hot Ones. I think it's Heartbeat hot sauce or
Sounds
something like that.
familiar,
Does that
yeah.
make sense?
Yeah.
And actually, Ace and Abby brought one of their hot sauces over because he made some pulled pork at one of our
Okay.
sessions, and we were eating tacos, and he had some of this hot sauce, and it was this pineapple habanero. It was amazing.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so I've tried a few of them, but I haven't tried like the shock value hot sauces. Like
Yeah, so like the bomb is stupid. Like I don't understand that. There's no
that's the one that just sets everyone off. It seems like they're like, I'm kind of tolerating this until I get to that one.
well, it's well, like they've said in the show, it's too hot for no reason. Like there's no flavor palette behind it. Like if I don't someone who actually enjoys that, I is a weird person as far as I'm concerned.
No, and that's the thing. I like to salvage the taste buds. Like I love heat too, but I
Hmm.
obviously don't want it to to like, I don't want to take a knife to my tongue,
Yeah, you
you
don't
know?
want to ruin your day. Like
Yeah.
that's just no fun,
Well,
man.
especially once it starts to make you feel a little crazy, like there is that threshold of heat where you start to feel a little bit out of body and, you know.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, we could go on about hot ones for probably forever
yeah,
because,
sorry, I went off the rails there, but
well, like I said, this is gonna go wherever it goes. So,
yeah,
couple quick ones before Zoom kicks us off here.
for sure.
What do you hope people take away from the music that you're making or that you're producing?
I hope that people connect to the artist stories and find a common ground in their life through that. I think that's what music has been for me. It's when I can connect with a song and it either feels cathartic because it makes me feel less alone in something I'm going through, or even just makes me feel good, and I feel that connection and that kinship with it. I want to create records like the ones that inspired me growing up.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean that's a perfect thing. I would think that you're trying to emulate something that did something for you because you can do that for someone else.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Now, last but not least, what motivates you to keep walking down this musical road? I know we talked about, always learning and things like that, but
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge piece of it. I think it's a fascination, to be honest, with the idea that you're creating something from nothing. Like, I think I enter every single day wondering if I'm going to be able to ever write another song again, or if I'm going to be able to come up with a new idea again. And somehow it just happens. And I find that process fascinating. It's like you're chasing this thing. It's not a chase, but it's almost like I wake up every day like I'm on the edge of my seat wondering how the hell I'm going to make it through another day creating, and yet it always shows up. That muse is always there if you're open enough to it.
mhm.
So I think that's what keeps me going, is like the pursuit of having this relationship with that muse, and knowing, just seeing if it can happen again. you
Yeah,
know?
I know that
um,
feeling for sure. Like
yeah,
even today,
yeah. I think every creative goes through that, right?
like even today, I knew I've been tired all day, but I'm like, we're gonna have a fun conversation. So that's gonna get me, keep me going. And then tonight I'm actually covering Gwar in Ottawa, and I'm
Oh,
expecting
cool.
to get covered in some sort of bloody looking slurry all over me. Like I'm trying to figure out how mentally I'm gonna be able to take some cool pictures while getting hosed upon.
And
So
that's the cool thing. It's like the different experiences that kind of, in some ways, sometimes it could be a not so fun creative experience, but a lot of the time, if you're just open to working with it, you can do some things you never imagined yourself doing before. So
mhm. Yeah, because
you'll
there's been
get some
points.
crazy gore lens stuff.
Yeah, there's been points where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here anymore. Like pictures
I
are
don't think any of us
pictures.
know what we're doing. It's I think you have an idea, like, and I think we also become unconscious of what we're doing a lot of the time because it just becomes innate to us. Like when I actually have to sit here and talk about what I do, or if I go to speak, to a bunch of students about what I do, I don't realize how much I know until I actually have to start talking about it. But
Hmm.
every day I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, I think that's also what it's going back. It ties back into that learning thing, right? Constantly challenging yourself, making yourself see things differently or do things differently.
Yeah, 100%. That's all the points I have written down here. Is there any final words of wisdom you'd like to leave to people?
Words of wisdom. I don't know about that. I don't know. Something that's been on my mind a lot these days is just trying not to get too far ahead or behind in your thoughts, and trying to live more presently. And I think with everything that's happening in the world around us now, and just how challenging life has gotten for so many, I'm really trying to be more mindful of things like this, of us two people that are just meeting and we're sharing a moment together, and hopefully that moment, can be something that we can carry forward, but as a result of being present in it and learning something new.
Mhm. I
So
learned
yeah,
a
I'm
lot
just
today.
I'm trying to just do beingness,
Yeah, just
a
being
little
here,
more,
just existing and
and
moving.
being in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. That's a daily goal for me, is just to make sure I keep going to the next day, really.
Luckily, you have a kid, and I feel like they do that for us. They force us into that. My dog does that for me too, because I just see. I was staring at her the other day, and I was like, I find it mind bending that she never has to think about a calendar. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like she's kind of just like, I'm happy to go with the flow wherever you guys are. I'm happy, and that's just been such a humbling thought. You
Yeah.
know, I'm like, be more like the dogs. You
Yes, I
know,
have
be
two dogs
present.
also, and one of them's 16 years old, so his version of a calendar is sleeping for 20 hours a day and then getting up a little bit.
Yeah,
The other one's 3 years old, so his version is like, if I give someone a toy, they're gonna play with me all day long. Like
right.
that's his goal in life is to give someone a toy. So he actually, him and my daughter are almost inseparable
Peas
because
in a pod. Yeah,
yeah, she's big enough that she can steal a toy from him and run around and he'll chase her and they have their whole thing going on. So it's fun just to
that's
watch life happen when it's happening.
That's it. Watch life happen. Like there's so much happening. I even looked outside and we're having this early spring right now, which is kind of scary. But just
Yeah.
seeing the birds and the squirrels and everybody, they're just doing their thing. They're existing in this space-time continuum, just
Mhm.
enjoying their moment. So yeah, I'm trying to be more like that.
Yeah, nature coming back so quick. We had two wolves cross through our backyard, and like we're in suburban Canada here like in Ottawa, and there's two
Wow.
schools on each side of us. So they just two wolves just walking through, and it's like, oh, okay, this is happening now too.
Yeah, we're all existing together.
Yeah. And they just walked by, they're looking at things and kind of checking things out. They weren't scared of anything. They were just, okay, we're going this way. We'll see you later.
That's awesome and scary.
Yeah, a little bit. Like the little coyotes, things like that happens. But when you see two full-grown wolves, it's like, all right,
Oh,
that's
we've had like crazy coyote issues here in Toronto where they started attacking like children and
oh
stuff on
really?
the street in broad daylight. There were a few incidents. I don't want to make it seem like it's like,
No, but
oh,
still
the
that I
coyotes are
mean,
taking over. But yeah, it's wild. It's like not something that I've seen every day. You know.
yeah, nature's just converging on all of us here.
Yeah.
Well, this was great to get to know you, to learn more about you, and I hope we're gonna get to do this again because I think like we can have a whole conversation about hot sauce at some point, I'm sure.
We should have a hot sauce hang. We'll send each other the same hot sauces and we could
Yeah,
eat hot
we can
sauce while
definitely
we
do that.
talk. Yeah. I love it.
All right, well, I will let you go enjoy the rest of your day and where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram or the World Wide Web. Just if you or the Google, you can just type in my name. It's kind of hard to spell my last name, but if you type in Hill Kourkoutis, you can find me. That's my handle.
Awesome. Well, we're gonna keep in touch.
Awesome. Can't wait.
All right, have a good one.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.